Okay, so you're here because you want to know about the market for audiological devices.
Yeah.
Right? Like where it is now and where it's headed.
Right.
We dug into a recent report to bring you the need-to-know info on all
Yeah,
that
so we'll break down all the important insights and figures so you can really understand this industry.
because it is dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
So first things first, by 2025, the global audiological devices market is predicted to reach, get this, USD 241.5 million.
Yeah, that's a big number, but honestly, the projected growth is even more interesting.
Totally. The forecast says there's going to be a huge climb with a CAGR of 7% from 2025 to 2033.
7%, that's substantial.
That means by 2033, the market could be worth USD 26,187.73466 million.
Wow.
But here's the thing that caught our eye. The report says one driver of this growth is going to be increasing awareness about hair health treatment.
That's an interesting connection.
I know, right?
Not sure how that translates directly to more audiological devices. Maybe there's some indirect link we're not seeing or a reporting quirk.
Yeah, it's worth keeping that in mind as we dig into the data.
Definitely.
So the report covers data from 2021 to 2033.
Right.
It looks at market size, CAGR, and other industry stats broken down by region and product segments.
Yeah, a pretty comprehensive overview.
Yeah. Let's kick things off with North America.
All right, so North America is currently leading the pack.
Okay.
In 2025, they're projected to have the largest market share, over 40% of the global revenue.
Wow, over 40%.
And the market size in 2025 is estimated to be USD 420.04 million.
That is huge.
Then from 2025 to 2033, the CAGR is expected to be around 6%.
Still a lot of growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's zoom in on the countries within North America. What are the key players there,
Well, the U.S. takes the lead.
as you might expect?
In 2025, they're estimated at USD 387.41 million with a 5.8% CAGR.
So still growing steadily.
Then you have Canada at USD 530.4 million with a slightly higher CAGR of 6.8%.
Okay.
And Mexico is at USD 402.22 million with a CAGR of 6.5%.
So even though the U.S. is the major player, Canada and Mexico are still showing decent growth.
Yeah, they are.
So why is North America doing so well, and why is it expected to keep growing?
Well, a few things are contributing to that.
Okay, like what?
First off, there's a high incidence of hearing loss in the region.
That makes sense.
And they have a really sophisticated healthcare system, which makes it easier for people to get diagnosed and treated.
Yeah, that's important.
Plus, you have all the major players in the audiological devices market. They're based in North America, so they're constantly pushing for innovation.
Right.
And of course, you can't forget the growing elderly population.
Well, that's a big factor.
They're more likely to experience hearing loss, and awareness of hearing health issues is high in North America.
Yeah, people are more likely to seek treatment.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like a combination of factors.
It is.
Okay, well, that gives us a good picture of North America.
It does.
What about Europe?
Europe comes in second for global market share in 2025.
Yeah.
They're at over 30% with a market size of USD 639.36 million.
So still a really significant market.
Oh, absolutely.
And the CAGR.
A bit lower than North America at 5.5% from 2025 to 2033.
Right, so still pretty steady growth, but not as explosive as other regions.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you give us a breakdown of the individual European countries and how they contribute to that?
Sure. So in 2025, we have the UK estimated at USD 947.41 million with a CAGR of 6.3%.
Okay.
Germany's a big one at USD 1,116.59 million with a KGR of 4.7%.
All right.
France comes in at USD 584.98 million and a 4.9% CAGR.
So those are the big players.
They are.
What about some of the other European countries?
Well, Russia is also notable at USD 874.98 million and a 4.5% CAGR.
Okay.
Spain follows with USD 462.14 million and a 4.5% CAGR.
Okay.
And then you have some smaller markets like Sweden at USD 174.82 million with a 5.6% CAGR.
Okay.
Denmark's at USD 118.43 million and a 5.3% CAGR. Switzerland is at USD 84.59 million with a 5.1% CAGR. And Luxembourg's at USD 67.67 million with a 5.8% CAGR.
So even the smaller markets are showing growth potential.
Yeah, it's not just concentrated in a few major players.
What about the rest of Europe collectively?
They account for USD 789.51 million with a CAGR of 4.2%.
So there's growth across the board.
Yeah.
But what's driving the growth in the European market?
Well, one major factor is reimbursement rules.
Right.
Many European countries have healthcare systems or insurance plans that cover audiological devices.
So that makes them more affordable,
Exactly.
and that helps more people access them.
Right.
Makes sense.
Also, Europe in general is very good at adopting new medical technology, so they're quick to integrate new devices into their healthcare systems.
Yeah, that's a big advantage.
It is. They also have a really strong healthcare infrastructure overall and good public awareness when it comes to hearing health.
Okay, so kind of like a perfect storm for market growth.
Yeah, you could say that. Plus, you have major manufacturers with a strong presence in Europe,
Huh.
and there's a lot of research and development happening in the region as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So we've covered North America and Europe.
We have
Now let's move on to the region that's predicted to have the fastest growth,
the Asia Pacific.
or APAC.
Yep.
So what's happening in APAC?
In 2025, APAC had about 23% of the global revenue
Okay.
and a market size of USD 357.96 million.
Not as big as North America or Europe yet.
Not yet, but their CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is projected to be 9.7%.
Wow, that's almost twice the global average.
Yeah, it's massive growth.
So where is all this growth happening within APAC?
Well, China's a big one.
Makes sense.
They had a market size of USD 136.34 million in 2025 and a CAGR of 9.2%.
So a major player and still growing rapidly.
Yeah. Then you have Japan at USD 504.80 million and an 8.2% CAGR.
Okay.
South Korea is also significant at USD 438.96 million and a CAGR of 8.8%.
Gotcha.
And India is really interesting.
Why is that?
They actually have the highest CAGR in all of APAC at 11.6%.
Wow.
Their market size in 2025 was USD 365.80 million.
So a lot of potential there.
Definitely.
What about some of the other APAC countries?
Australia is worth mentioning at USD 100.21 million and a 9% CAGR.
Okay.
And you have Singapore at USD 73.16 million and a 10% CAGR.
Right.
Taiwan's at USD 142.66 million and a 9.5% CAGR.
Mhm.
Southeast Asia collectively is at USD 141.43 million and a 10.5% CAGR.
Okay.
And the rest of APAC is at USD 164.61 million and a 9.5% CAGR.
So growth is pretty much everywhere in the region.
It is.
So what's causing this incredible growth in APAC?
A few key factors.
Like what?
Well, the population in many APAC countries is huge.
Yeah.
And they're becoming wealthier, which means more people can afford healthcare.
That makes sense.
And there's a growing awareness of hearing conditions as health problems.
So people are more likely to seek help.
Exactly.
And what about the healthcare systems in the region?
They're expanding and modernizing.
That's important.
And there's also support from governments and regulatory bodies.
Uh-huh.
Plus, there's an increasing adoption of digital and high-tech audiological equipment.
So they're really embracing new technology.
There.
Okay, so it's a combination of demographics, awareness, healthcare infrastructure, and technology adoption,
That's right.
all contributing to APAC's rapid growth.
Exactly.
All right, so what about South America?
In 2025, South America held more than 5% of the global revenue, with a market size of USD 579.18 million. And they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 7.7% from 2025 to 2033.
Solid growth. Who are the key players in South America?
Brazil has the largest market,
Okay.
USD 247.89 million in 2025, and an 8.3% CAGR.
That's a healthy CAGR.
Argentina's next at USD 97.30 million and a CAGR of 8.6%.
Even higher.
Then you have Colombia at USD 51.55 million with a 7.5% CAGR, Peru at USD 47.49 million with a 7.9% CAGR, and Chile at USD 41.70 million with an 8% CAGR. The rest of South America collectively accounts for USD 93.25 million and has a CAGR of 6.8%.
So Brazil and Argentina are the main drivers.
Pretty much.
Why is South America experiencing this growth?
Well, the report highlights a couple of things.
What are they?
Noise pollution is a big factor.
Okay.
Places with high levels of noise contribute to hearing issues.
Makes sense.
And there's a growing availability of those digitally enhanced hearing appliances.
The high-tech ones.
Exactly.
Okay.
And like in other regions, awareness of hearing loss is increasing.
Uh-huh.
And people are starting to understand the benefits of early treatment.
So they're more likely to seek help.
Right.
Okay, what about the Middle East?
In 2025, the Middle East accounted for around 2% of global revenue with a market size of USD 609.66 million. Their CAGR is projected at 8.3% from 2025 to 2033.
Decent growth. Which countries are leading the way there?
Saudi Arabia is in the lead.
Okay.
They had a market size of USD 214.60 million in 2025 and an 8.6% CGR.
Not bad.
The UAE is next at USD 125.59 million and a slightly higher CGR of 8.8%.
Okay.
Turkey is at USD 48.77 million with an 8.9% CGR.
Interesting.
And Qatar's also at USD 48.77 million, but with a 7.8% CAGR.
Oh, wait.
Egypt's at USD 36.58 million with an 8.1% CAGR.
Gotcha.
And the rest of the Middle East collectively accounts for USD 135.34 million and has a 7.5% CAGR.
So it seems like the UAE and Turkey have particularly strong growth potential.
They do.
What's driving that?
Well, for one, the population in the Middle East is aging,
Uh-huh.
and people generally have more disposable income,
Okay.
so they can spend more on healthcare.
Right.
Plus, awareness of hearing loss and related disorders is on the rise.
Okay.
Governments are investing more in healthcare, too.
So there are more resources available.
Yeah. And the introduction of new hearing aid technologies is also helping.
Makes sense. Okay, so the Middle East has some good things going for it in terms of market growth.
It does.
And last but not least, Africa.
Africa is currently the smallest market.
Okay.
Around 1% of global revenue in 2025 with a market size of USD 335.31 million.
Small but mighty.
Right, and their projected CAGR is 7.3%.
So still solid growth. Yeah. Which countries are contributing the most to that?
South Africa is the biggest player at USD 118.03 million in 2025 with an 8.2% CAGR.
Okay.
Then there's Nigeria at USD 26.83 million with a 7.5% CAGR.
Right.
And the rest of Africa combined comes in at USD 190.46 million with a CAGR of 6.5%.
So South Africa is really leading the way there.
They are.
What's driving growth in Africa?
Well, their healthcare systems are improving in a lot of countries.
That's good to hear.
And people are becoming more knowledgeable about hearing health.
So the awareness is increasing?
Yeah.
What about access to technology?
It's getting better.
Okay.
Advanced audiological equipment is becoming more available.
That's key.
You also have major international companies getting involved in the African market. And there are public awareness campaigns and early screening programs being implemented.
So people getting diagnosed earlier.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference in terms of treatment outcomes.
And what about the availability of qualified professionals?
There are more and more healthcare providers and audiologists becoming available.
So the infrastructure is growing.
It is.
Okay, so even though Africa's starting from a smaller base, there's a lot of potential there.
Definitely.
Okay, so that gives us a really good overview of the regional picture.
Yeah, it does.
Now let's dive into the different segments of the market.
Okay.
So the product outlook, the disease type outlook, and the end user outlook.
Let's start with product outlook.
All right, so what are the main types of audiological devices out there?
Well, hearing aids are still the most dominant product.
Makes sense.
They're used by a lot of people, and the technology is always getting better.
Like what kind of improvements?
Well, things like better noise reduction, wireless connectivity, and rechargeable batteries.
So it's becoming more convenient and user-friendly.
Exactly. And that's really important for people who wear hearing aids every day.
Plus, there's that growing elderly population.
Uh-huh. They're a big driver for hearing aid sales.
Yeah. So hearing aids are the mainstay. But what about other types of devices?
Well, diagnostic devices are actually the fastest growing segment.
Really?
Yeah, it's because there's a big push for early detection of hearing problems.
Especially in kids.
Right. If you catch hearing loss early, you can intervene and get much better outcomes.
So what kind of diagnostic devices are we talking about?
Things like audiometers, otoscopes, and tympanometers.
Okay, so audiometers measure hearing ability.
Yeah.
And otoscopes let doctors look inside the ear.
Uh-huh. And tympanometers check the function of the middle ear.
So basically, they help identify any potential issues.
Well, that's right.
Okay, so those are the main types of devices. Now let's talk about disease types.
Right.
So which specific conditions are driving the market for audiological devices?
Otitis media is a big one.
That's a middle ear infection, right?
Yeah, it's pretty common.
Especially in kids.
Uh-huh.
And why is it such a big driver for the market?
Well, there's a growing trend of using customized digital solutions in audiology. And that's really helping to improve outcomes for people with otitis media.
So these devices are helping with treatment?
Yeah, especially for surgical procedures.
Okay. Are there any other disease segments that are worth mentioning?
Meniere's disease is another one.
What's that?
It's an inner ear disorder.
Okay.
It can cause vertigo, tinnitus, and hearing loss.
Sounds pretty awful.
It can be.
And how do audiological devices help with Meniere's disease?
Well, they help assess the balance problems associated with it,
Okay.
and they can also help manage the hearing loss that often comes with it.
So these devices are crucial for both diagnosis and treatment.
They are.
Okay, what about other conditions?
The report mentions otosclerosis.
That's not.
It's a condition that causes hearing loss because of abnormal bone growth in the middle ear.
Okay.
And they also mention acoustic tumors.
Right. Those can also affect hearing and balance.
They can.
So it's a pretty diverse range of conditions driving the need for audiological devices.
Yeah, it's not just one thing.
Okay, so we've looked at the products and the disease types.
It have.
Now, where are people actually using these devices?
Well, hospitals are the biggest end user right now.
That makes sense.
They see a huge number of patients, and they need to have all the latest diagnostic and treatment tools.
Especially for complex cases.
Exactly.
But are there any other significant end-user groups?
Ambulatory surgery centers.
What are those?
They're like smaller outpatient facilities.
Okay.
They offer a more convenient and affordable option for some procedures.
So they're becoming more popular.
They are.
And how does that impact the market for audiological devices?
Well, it's driving demand for portable audiometers,
Okay.
the kind that are easy to set up and use in an outpatient setting.
So the trend towards outpatient care is changing the types of devices being used.
It is.
What about specialized clinics?
They're another significant end user.
Okay, so people are going to clinics specifically for hearing healthcare.
Right.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So yeah, hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, and clinics are all important parts of the market.
Okay, that gives us a good understanding of the end user landscape.
It does.
Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
The market dynamics.
The forces driving growth, the challenges holding it back, and the overall trends shaping the future.
Exactly. So what are the main factors driving the audiological devices market?
Well, the biggest one is the aging population.
Makes sense.
Age-related hearing loss is very common. So as the world's population gets older, the demand for audiological devices will keep growing.
Right.
Another factor is awareness.
Okay.
People are more aware of hearing health now, and they know there are effective treatments available.
So they're more likely to seek help.
Exactly.
And what about technology?
That's a huge driver.
Oh.
We're seeing constant advancements in audiological technology. Devices are becoming more effective, more user-friendly, and even more stylish.
So they're more appealing to people.
Definitely. And that helps drive adoption.
Okay, so those are the main drivers.
Yeah.
What about the things that might be holding back market growth?
Well, one issue is the cost of these devices. High-tech audiological equipment can be really expensive,
Yeah.
and that can be a barrier for people who can't afford it.
Especially in places without good insurance coverage.
Exactly.
What about other challenges?
Well, in some places, there's still not enough recognition of hearing loss as a serious health issue,
Okay.
so people might not seek help early enough.
And that can impact treatment outcomes?
It can.
And I imagine there's still some stigma associated with hearing aids.
There is.
So people might be reluctant to get them even if they need them.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Okay, so there are definitely some hurdles to overcome.
There are.
What about the trends shaping the future of the market?
One big trend is the focus on making treatment more affordable.
Okay,
Companies are looking at ways to make devices cheaper and more accessible.
that's great.
And there's also a push to educate the public about hearing loss.
So to reduce stigma and encourage people to seek help,
Exactly.
what about the incidence of hearing loss itself?
It's actually increasing.
Really?
Yeah, and not just in older people.
So this is becoming a problem for all age groups.
It is.
Why is that?
Could be a few reasons.
Okay.
Exposure to loud noise is one possibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there could be other factors at play, too.
So this trend of increasing hearing loss is likely to continue to fuel market growth.
Yeah, it's going to be a major driver.
Okay, so we've talked about the drivers, the restraints, and the trends.
We have.
What about the competitive landscape?
Well, there are a lot of companies vying for market share, but the report highlights some recent activity by key players.
Okay, like what?
Well, in December 2024, GN expanded their Resound Nexia product line.
GN's a big name in hearing aids.
They are.
And what was special about this new product line?
They really focused on improving hearing in noisy environments, and they also enhanced the Bluetooth connectivity.
So you can connect your hearing aids to other devices.
Yeah, like your phone or your TV.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It makes the whole experience more seamless.
Okay, so GN's pushing the boundaries of technology. What about other companies?
Well, in January 2025, Demant acquired Dansk Core Center.
Who are they?
It's a network of hearing care clinics in Denmark.
Okay.
This acquisition basically doubled the number of hearing care stores that Demant owns in Denmark.
So they're expanding their reach.
Exactly.
And what does that mean for consumers?
Well, it means they have more access to Demant's Oticon technology.
Oticon's another big name in hearing aids.
It is.
So it's like they're trying to control more of the market.
You could say that.
Okay, so we're seeing both innovation and strategic moves happening in the market.
Yeah, it's a dynamic landscape.
It is. Okay, so let's wrap things up with a quick recap.
All right.
What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into the audiological devices market?
Well, the market's pretty big already, and it's only going to get bigger. It's projected to be worth over USD 26 billion by 2033.
Wow.
That growth is being driven by the aging population and increasing awareness of hearing health.
Right.
North America and Europe are the biggest markets right now, but the Asia-Pacific region is growing the fastest.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway.
We also looked at the different segments of the market.
Okay.
Hearing aids are still the top seller, but diagnostic devices are the fastest growing segment.
So early detection is becoming more important.
It is.
And in terms of disease types, otitis media is the biggest one. Hospitals are still the main end user, but those ambulatory surgery centers are on the rise. So things are shifting.
They are.
Okay, so the market's growing, it's becoming more diverse, and there's a lot of innovation happening.
Yeah, it's an exciting space to watch.
It is. So as we think about the future of this market, here's something for you to consider. What do you think are going to be the biggest challenges and opportunities when it comes to making quality audiological care accessible and affordable for everyone?
That's a big question.
It is.
And it's not just about technology.
Right. It's also about economics, social factors, healthcare systems, and all sorts of other things.
It's a complex issue.
It is, but it's an important one to think about.
Definitely.
So keep that in mind as you follow the developments in this market.
I will.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.